The millionaire single dad stood speechless when the waitress sat down to play chess with his disabled son, never expecting those very moves would unlock the boy's strategic talent and inspire the entire world. Hello to my wonderful viewers, get ready for a story that will make your heart tremble. Don't forget to hit like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're drawn into this journey, and leave a comment below to let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. It's amazing to see people from all around the world joining us today. Ethan Marshall was once the very symbol of steadfastness and brilliance in Seattle's tech world. He could turn a handwritten idea on a napkin into a startup worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But that morning, in a small cafe tucked between cold glass towers, Ethan felt like a lost soul wandering the maze of his own making. The cafe itself was unremarkable. The aroma of roasted coffee blended with the scent of waffles, the clatter of keyboards, and the murmur of conversations among young engineers. Yet for Ethan, this place was a sanctuary. Beside him sat Liam, his 11-year-old son, with clear but guarded ice in a wheelchair. Liam's small hands moved slowly as he arranged wooden chess pieces on the table, as though they were the final fragments of a world only he understood. Ethan watched his son, his heart heavy. He had once stood before investment boards, persuading the toughest backers with incisive numbers and far-reaching vision. Yet now, facing Liam, he felt like a powerless father, fumbling for answers to silent questions. "A cappuccino for me and for him," Ethan paused. Liam never ordered, he only ate when he chose to. Ethan sighed, nodding to finish the sentence for him. At that moment, Liam abruptly swept his pieces across the board. His movements were faster than usual. The boy's small hands darted, forming a complex position Ethan had never seen before. Leaning in, Ethan squinted to observe. Though he didn't fully understand, he sensed something extraordinary. Soft footsteps approached. Nora Evans, the young waitress with calm eyes and a gentle smile, carried a tray of coffee. Used to quiet customers, she almost missed the chess setup before Liam. Her hand froze. 1 second, 2 seconds. Then her eyes widened. "This is the Sicilian defense, dragon variation, isn't it?" she whispered, barely audible. Ethan turned, astonished. "You know chess?" Nora nodded lightly. "I studied chess in college. It's a very distinctive strategy, but the way he's arranged it, it's almost an advanced variant, only seen in a 1,985 game between Kasparov and Pologaevsky." Liam suddenly stopped, looked up at Nora. His gaze was fleeting but intense, as if she'd touched some deep memory within him. Ethan felt as if struck by lightning, not because of the chess position, but because, for the first time, someone outside his family reached into Liam's world, if only for a moment. And more than that, he saw a strange spark in Liam's eyes, neither fear nor confusion, but something like recognition. In that instant, a wild but undeniable thought flashed through Ethan's mind. If Liam could recreate such an advanced position purely by memory and intuition, and if Nora truly understood it, could they be holding a key he had never considered? Could the hidden logic in the silent world Liam created be the solution to the crisis dragging his company down? Nora bent over the pieces, her fingers gliding across them, her eyes misty with recollection. "This boy isn't just playing chess, you know. He's sending signals. Every move is an idea, a message." Ethan fell silent. For the first time in years, his heart pounded not over a big deal or fresh capital, but because of a fragile hope flickering among those silent wooden pieces. He looked at Liam, then at Nora. Perhaps the answer did not lie with top experts, AI, or revenue projections, but with a quiet boy and a waitress who could read the language of chess. And he knew the real game had only just begun. But after that day, as Ethan's questions multiplied, he couldn't stop himself from learning more about Nora. That unassuming girl with weathered eyes seemed to be more than just an ordinary waitress. One late afternoon, he returned to the cafe, sat at the exact table from before, and asked the manager about Nora. "Nora, She used to be a chess prodigy, from Portland, won several major tournaments back in high school. I even saw her picture in a sports magazine once. Then she abruptly quit it all. I heard her mother died of a serious illness, and since then, Nora never mentioned chess again. Ethan fell silent, a talent cut short, a star that quietly fell. And now, she chose to wait tables, hiding her old brilliance behind a pale blue apron, living quietly as if afraid the world might know she had once shone. A strange feeling welled up in him equal parts, pity and admiration. The next day, Ethan arrived earlier than usual. When Nora appeared, he spoke only a single sentence about the chess position from the day before. Nora was silent, her eyes briefly wary, then she turned away, opened the drawer beneath the counter, and retrieved an old notebook, its cover worn at the corners, yellowed with time. Without another word, she placed it in front of Ethan. The notebook was an entire universe. Intricate chess diagrams drawn with painstaking precision, interspersed with small, handwritten notes, not just strategies, but whispered confidences to herself. Phrases like, "Don't let emotion dictate your moves, but don't let reason lose its heart," or, "A single sacrificial move can open the entire game or end it." These were more than tactics. They were memories, confessions, fragments of a past she had tried to forget. Ethan didn't need to ask more. He understood. This was Nora telling her story not in words, but through moves she had paid for with tears. She had once become so absorbed in chess that she neglected her mother's final breath. The guilt that weighed on her for years afterward made her hand tremble at the sight of a chess piece. Chess, once a passion, had become a wound in her heart. Yet perhaps that was why she alone could understand the silent world Liam was constructing. From that day on, Nora used her breaks to come to Liam's chess table. She didn't try to teach or interfere. She simply observed in silence, at times gently adjusting a piece when a position seemed incomplete. And then, as if an invisible bridge had formed between them, Liam began to respond not in words, nor with a glance, but with moves. Each time she corrected a piece, Liam continued. An opening move, a greeting, a deft counter, a nod. Their positions were no longer random. They had become a unique language, where emotion was encoded in strategy. Ethan watched it all with astonishment and deep emotion. He had never seen his son interact with anyone this way, not with words, but with soul. And Norath girl bearing a past wound was the only one able to touch that universe. One late evening, as the cafe prepared to close, Nora sat down beside Ethan. Outside, streetlights cast faint mist across the window panes. She didn't look at him, but quietly said that perhaps she could no longer live in the past. Meeting Liam, Ethan felt like a sign from the universe that what she had feared might now lead her back to herself. Ethan said nothing, but in his heart, something cracked open, a sense of gratitude, a spark of hope. He had not only found someone who could understand his son, but also discovered an ally, a kindred spirit, learning to forgive herself, just as he had longed to do. And so their journey began, a girl who once abandoned her dream, a father who rediscovered faith, and a boy whose silent eyes held a universe of intellect. 3 lives, 3 pains, 3 new beginnings interwoven in silence and in the unexpected language of chess pieces. Ethan opened the large glass doors of his downtown Seattle office he never imagined would one day welcome someone like Nora. Not an investor, not a veteran programmer, much less a seasoned tech negotiator. Yet now, with Liam seated alone at the chess table in the corner, Ethan knew that Nora was the only person he needed to invite inside. This office had always been the domain of grand plans, marathon meetings, and whiteboards filled with data. But in that quietly tucked-away corner, Ethan had arranged an entirely different world for Liam. A small, round wooden table held Liam's favorite ebony and ivory chess set. Beside it stood a custom-designed tactics board easy for Liam to read not with words, but with symbols, colors, and arrows. Nora entered without a word, moving quietly toward Liam. She carried no notebooks or notes, only her gentle gaze and hands accustomed to chess pieces. She sat down beside him, keeping a respectful distance so as not to startle him, then lightly touched a pawn and turned it to the right in a silent greeting. Liam stared at the pawn for a moment, his eye often fixed on some distant, indistinct point now truly focused. Then he moved a knight, swiftly and decisively. A new position began to take shape not according to any conventional opening, but as a deliberate arrangement that defied every traditional strategy Nora had ever known. Instead of correcting him, she simply observed. She understood that what mattered in that moment was connection, not correctness. Over the following days, Nora returned each afternoon. She spoke little to Ethan. Her full attention was on Liam every slight reaction, every hand movement, every tilt of his head as he studied the board. She never forced a move, only used gentle gestures to encourage him. Whenever Liam completed a position, Nora nodded in approval, and sometimes a simple touch on the shoulder would bring a smile to his face. One day, as she examined one of Liam's recent setups, Nora froze. His moves weren't only logical, they mirrored a strategic structure she had seen before. She asked Ethan for the schematic of the tech deal he was working on, the one he carried around every day, puzzling over its next steps. When she compared the two, one a financial model on paper, the other a chess position on the table, Nora felt hypnotized. Liam's moves exactly mapped the optimal sequence of steps in that deal. Not in business theory, but in instinctual intuition encoding strategy through the shapes of a chessboard. Nora said nothing to Ethan at that moment. She simply continued playing with Liam, this time memorizing each move. From then on, she taught him to use chess as a language, not just to win, but to communicate thought. Every queen was an active decision. Every pawn sacrificed was a necessary trade-off. Liam didn't speak a word, yet through the board he began to share the universe in his Minda world, where logic and intuition wove together in a unique rhythm. Ethan stood outside the door, watching in silence. He didn't intervene or speak. Each movement his son made, each approving nod from Nora, felt like something fundamental was shifting, not just in Liam, but within himself. His heart tightened, not from worry, but from emotion. Nora hadn't just helped Liam develop a talent, she had opened a door Ethan thought would never exist. A pathway to the future. A place where Liam was not seen as different, but as essential. A place where his son's silence was no longer a sign of helplessness, but a guiding light for them both. Dear viewers, take a moment to relax or sip some water, and stay tuned for the surprising turns ahead. Comment 1 if you're still with us and enjoying the story. Pressure from the tech deal still weighed heavily on Ethan's shoulders, but in the tensest moments, Liam's gaze at Nora made him forget everything else. The boy seemed to glow each time Nora appeared, as if every cell in him was awakened by her gentle presence. Ethan observed her patience, the way she quietly waited for Liam's response through each chess move, and he began to feel something deeper than gratitude, a quiet emotion he could no longer deny. One late evening, after all the offices had gone dark, Ethan and Nora sat together in the large conference room. Liam had just completed a particularly unusual position and gone home with his caretaker, leaving the digital chessboard on the big screen, each move clearly displayed. They both stared at that strange formation which did not follow any standard pattern but carried its own unique structure. Ethan pointed to a sequence of moves where the pieces were arranged like an indirect counterattack plan. Nora fell silent. Then she leaned toward the screen, tracing the symbols with her finger. This position, if you apply its logic to your deal, you could reshape the entire negotiation strategy. Step back, redirect the capital flow, and create leverage against both partners. Ethan was speechless. He had considered every scenario but had never imagined such a structure. The numbers, the charts, the tense negotiation round Saul suddenly unlocked by the sequence of moves from a boy who had never spoken a word. But at the same time, fear rose in him. If they failed, would Liam be hurt? The boy had begun to open up, to connect. Would an unforeseen setback make him shut down completely? Ethan looked at Nora, his hesitation clear in his eyes. She did not shy away from his gaze. "You've already seen it," she said softly. "The boy is leading you his own way. If you don't trust Liam, how can he keep trusting himself?" Ethan said nothing, only nodded gently. When he reached to touch her hand to say thank you, their hands paused for a moment. There was no distance, no roles, just two people drawn together by something fragile yet undeniable. In that instant, Ethan's gaze softened more than ever, and when their lips met in a gentle kiss, every sound in the conference room seemed to vanish. But immediately afterward, Nora withdrew her hand. She stood, her eyes still on him, but her voice carried a crack. "I can't afford to fail again." Her whisper cut the silence. Then she turned and left the room, as if staying any longer would make her lose the composure she had struggled to maintain for so many years. The next morning, Liam did not touch a single chess piece. His once agile hands lay still beside his wheelchair. He did not respond when Ethan attempted to reset the position, nor did he smile when prompted to move a pawn. Ethan realized this silence was not the old kind, but a new kind, a hush shaped by absence. He tried everything to spark his son's interest, but in vain. Liam simply sat staring out the window where Nora's figure had entered each afternoon. And in that silence, Ethan understood something he had never dared name. She was not only the one who helped Liam unlock his gift, but the very heartbeat that made the boy shine. And in his own heart, Ethan had no more doubt. She was the one he could not afford to lose for Liam's sake, and for the sake of his own heart, still healing. But he refused to give up. Ethan decided to do the only thing his heart urged him to do, return to where it all began. One early morning, when Seattle lay silent in the mist, he brought Liam to the little corner cafe where the smell of roasted coffee and baked cinnamon once opened a door to hope. Liam sat quietly in his wheelchair, clutching a folded piece of paper, the crude drawing he had painstakingly worked on all night without sleep. Inside the cafe, Nora was clearing tables. Her eyes were sunken from sleepless nights, her hands moving slowly as if weighed down by unspoken doubts. When she turned and saw Liam's eyes lighting up like a June afternoon as he held the paper out to Hirsch froze. On the paper was a childlike sketch of a large chessboard. Around it stood three figures, a man, a woman, and a smiling little boy. No names, no colors, no words, just the image. But Nora understood everything. In that moment, the cafe's speaker crackled to life with an announcement from the Seattle Tech Conference where top companies were battling for the right to negotiate the year's biggest strategic deal. A clear female voice rang out, "The chess counterstructure strategy developed by an innovation team under the guidance of Ethan Marshall-Haas been chosen as the final presentation at this afternoon's crucial session." Ethan said nothing. He simply looked at Nora with the desperate eyes of a businessman pleading for help, but with the hopeful eyes of a father trying to save the one thing that made his son shine. Nora took the paper from Liam's hand. She gazed at those trembling lines as if touching a long-forgotten memory. Fear still lingered in her, but something stronger was stirring, an invitation to return. Not to the past, but to the present where passion could be rekindled by the gaze of a boy who once lived in silence. "All right," she whispered, "I'll help Liam." That afternoon, the penthouse conference room of the city's grandest hotel was packed. Representatives from tech giants, investors, the media, and market regulators filled every seat. Ethan sat in the front row, but his mind wasn't on the detailed financial charts before him. He looked toward the stage, where Liam in a small gray suit sat beside Nora, quietly studying the simulated chess position projected on the large screen. When the lights dimmed, Nora stepped forward. No microphone, no special effects. Just her with a steady voice and resolute eyes beginning to present the position Liam had designed. Each move appeared on the screen: the sacrificial pawn, the pressure counterattack, the fallback creating leverage. No one spoke not because they didn't understand, but because they were in awe. She spoke not only of tactics but of market psychology, demonstrating how a seemingly small concession in a deal could save the entire negotiation, just as a timely sacrifice on a chessboard could turn the tide. This strategy, Nora paused, looking toward Liam, was developed not by a market expert, but by an 11-year-old boy who taught me that the most important language isn't wordsits understanding. The hall erupted. Thunderous applause followed. Investors rose and began rapid exchanges on their phones. The CEOs of both partner companies turned to Ethan and nodded. The deal was, say vedno, redefined by an unprecedented method in tech industry history. Amid the crowd, Ethan stood silently. His eyes never left Liam the boy, gripping Nora's hand so tightly, lips pressed together to hold back emotion. Ethan stepped onto the stagionot, jostling, not offering congratulations. He simply approached her and whispered, as if in a moment meant only for them, "You didn't just save the company, you saved our future." Nora turned to him. Tears streamed down her cheeks, not from mere emotion, but because she knew this moment was the answer to all the years she thought she had lost. In those eyes, she no longer saw a failure, but someone newly reborn through a boy's talent and a man's unwavering care. From the depths of her heart, Nora understood. Her passion had never vanished. It was merely waiting for its chance, and now it had found its way back. That morning, soft sunlight filtered through the expansive glass windows of the top-floor office, casting a gentle golden sheen over the room. Ethan stood quietly inside, his hand resting on the familiar wooden table where countless silent matches of chess had once unfolded between Liam and Nora. The lingering aroma of coffee in the air recalled their very first dawn meeting in the little cafe where the impossible had begun to take shape. Liam sat in his wheelchair by the table, clutching a handcrafted wooden chess piece, a small gift he had carved himself, etching the image of 3 figures around a board, mirroring the drawing he once gave Nora. His eyes shone with brilliance, yet held a depth beyond his 11 years. Nora stood beside him, no longer wearing the pale blue apron of that first cafe encounter, but dressed in a simple, sturdy, neutral-toned vest. Her face retained its gentle features, but her eyes were different now, free from fear, unburdened by the past. They held the calm of someone who had walked through loss and rediscovered her true purpose. Ethan approached, hand slipping into his jacket pocket, then slowly withdrew a small object wrapped in deep velvet cloth. He unveiled it to reveal a gleaming silver pin, engraved with the form of a knight imperfect, yet refined and resolute. It symbolized the journey these 3 seemingly lost souls had forged together. "Together," Ethan said, his voice husky, "we will share Liam's gift with the world." Nora reached out and took the pin. As her fingertips touched the cool metal, a curious sensation welled within her, not pride, but awakening. She pinned it to her vest, as though fastening a promise to her heart, a responsibility, a new mission. From that moment, the Liam's Moves Academy was born. It was nothing grandiose, no fanfare or slogans, just a small room within Ethan's office complex, where a chessboard always stood ready, and children with disabilities were welcomed not with pity, but with respect. Liam became the first student not for being exceptional, but because he proved that hidden intellect could emerge when truly heard. Nora took on the role of lead instructor, teaching not only chess, but how to navigate each child's inner landscape. Ethan marshaled a tech team to build interactive tactic boards that visualized emotions through color, light, and sound. Every child who entered Liam's Moves carried a unique Minda strategy waiting to be understood until the moment their pieces were set down. Though still silent, Liam began to smile more often. He did more than play chess communicated. With every position, he wove a story. He helped classmates discover their own languages. In each move, he rewrote how the world saw silent Saynote as a deficit, but as another form of strength. From Seattle, their story spread. Major tech firms sent letters to thank the Academy and requested permission to apply some of its strategies to data analysis and market planning. Special needs schools began studying the Liam's Moves model as a new pedagogical approach. The media stopped labeling Liam the autistic boy and instead hailed him as the silent strategist. One afternoon, as Nora gently polished the chessboard, Liam moved a knight to the center and paused. He said nothing, but his eyes flicked to Ethan and Nora with clear intent. No explanation was needed. They both stepped forward, Ethan placing a hand on his son's shoulder, Nora taking his hand. In that moment, there was no teacher and no pupil, just a team. A team bound by a wordless language more empathetic and powerful than any speech. The story doesn't end there. For every new chess game opens another chapter. Within each child's heart lies a unique strategy waiting to be heard. And within every adult brave enough to believe, there lies the power to change the world. Liam places a piece at the center of the board as if sketching the future. A future not only for him, but for all those who have ever been misunderstood, misjudged, or felt they had no voice. Yet now, through each move, they speak, and the world, for the first time, learns to listen. The journey of Ethan, Nora, and Liam is more than the story of three people overcoming adversity. It is proof that every soul, no matter how silent, carries a singular life strategy, a flame that needs understanding and nurturing. Sometimes, all it takes is one person to pause, to listen with the heart instead of with words, and an entirely new world can open. If you have ever felt voiceless or loved someone living in silence, believe that miracles can still begin from a look, a chess piece, a small action. This story does not end here, for the path to healing always begins where we dare to believe and dare to love. If this story has touched your heart, please hit like, share, and subscribe. Leave us a comment. We'd love to know where in the US you're watching from and what moment resonated most with you. Who knows, perhaps the next chapter begins with your own story.